Hello everybody, thank you for coming. We've got a nice little agenda for you today. We've got Tom Johnson down from Salford going to talk about multivariate testing. And then Nathan and, sorry, Boblin's name should be on there as well. We're going to talk about MVTing the Homogeneous in the new article pages. Holly is from editorial, is going to talk about publishing story online. And then we've got a series of conference reports. Michael, Sarah and Phil will be talking about recent conferences they've been to. I'm going to pass over to you, Michael, who will get us started. Not Michael, that's a line. I'm going to talk to Tom. Tom, thank you for coming to Salford.
Hey, so I've been given like really quick informal microphone training, but I'm going to do this a lot. So if I zone out, like someone remind me to do the microphone thing. So hi, I'm Tom. I work for a team called One Service Development. We've been around for a little while. We're predominantly like a horizontal team that works with program makers on digital projects. But I'm not here to talk about that at all, but if that sounds interesting, grab me after. I would like to talk about that as well. The main reason I'm here is that prior to working at the BBC, I spent about 10 years working in the commercial sector in e-commerce, doing quite a lot of testing. Mostly A/B, a little bit of MVT, not a big fan of MVT. I'll get to that later. So directly in my role before joining the BBC, I was lucky enough to work with some really, really smart people on a project where we were really focusing on the mechanics of testing and really looking at making it more accurate and reliable. So really like getting into the tooling and the process. So I've basically taken all that stuff over 10 years and boiled it down into 10 hints and tips I'm going to share. So I'm going to whip through these really quick because I've only got 15 minutes. So start off with number one. So Whac-A-Mole. I can get all 10 films and TV programs as well. Like, not a prize, but TV manager. So number one, Whac-A-Mole. So often when people are testing, they focus on like a really small area or a single metric, which is super, super dangerous because you're kind of looking and you're so focused on this metric, you don't realize you kind of pushed something down here. It's sort of popped up way over here out of your sort of area of focus. So I've seen tests, for example, commercial tests where conversion went up, but average order value went down and vice versa. So it's really about understanding which variant in a test is best for a combination of metrics. So like really having a wide view on your analysis. So taking the time to choose the right metrics and KPIs, both local and overall. And the main thing is having this idea of like a health check across the whole of your product or project whilst testing, not just focusing on a single metric. So this gets really complicated when you start to do multiple tests as well, and you start to get combinations of variants, and you've got all of a sudden a lot of data to understand. And how do you do this? Analysis of testing is complicated, so it requires a deep skill and understanding of statistical analysis, but also problem solving and investigative skills as well. So each test is also unique, and you need to be like right in the data. So a generic report from a tool is just not enough. You need to understand what's actually happening with your individual test. So some of the most valuable insights I've had from testing haven't come out of a report spat out by a tool. It's from someone who's got deep analysis of raw log data, and that's usually by a data scientist. So someone who can I'm talking about someone who can tell you like the intricacies of binomial distribution and the differences between different like types of statistical significance. Like that's just really complicated. You need someone who really, really understands it. So as I said, every test is unique, but this level of interrogation allows you to like really know what's going on. So many things can trip up a test. You can get like outliers in your data, for example, that completely screw up a test. And if you go off an automated report, you just don't see it, and the test is kind of useless at that point. So when I sort of tell people I know a little bit about testing, most common question by a long way, how long do you want to test for? Answer, I have no idea. It's really hard to know how long you should run a test for. So there's online calculators, and you can stick in the amount of traffic, your current conversion, or the thing you're trying to change, and the uplift you expect to see. If you knew accurate numbers for all of those things, you probably wouldn't need to test, and you're unlikely to get your exact uplift right, because you're sort of assuming your test is going to win, and you know exactly how much it's going to win. So the headline here is like, I've never estimated the exact duration of a test accurately. That's a really hard message to sell into a business, because businesses hate uncertainty. So what can we say? What are the kind of guidelines and things that we can say, like, this is how long we'll run for, and this is when we'll know it's concluded? Because it's really dangerous to say, oh, we'll just test everything for 2 weeks. Like, the test is done when it's done. It's not done after a set amount of time that you guess it will be done. So my sort of rough guidelines for how long you should run a test for. A full user cycle. So again, I've done this in the commercial world where, I'm not gonna lie, it's way easier because there's cycles around where people get paid. You always run a test for more than a month because there's different purchasing behavior at different times of the month. So it's about kind of taking that analysis and applying it to our products. So what kind of cycles of usage and behavior do we see in our products that we can understand that happen regularly, so we can make sure we've got a testing period that covers like these types of behavior, and you cover all of them. Because if you have a test that covers one type of behavior at a particular time, and then you test again, you know, it's not valid for like the whole of your sort of user cycle. So it's really about understanding those weekly, daily, monthly trends within your product. And how to know when a test is like baked and ready, 95% plus significance and steady. So it's really easy to log into an online tool and it'll say like 95% significance, green thumbs up, you've paid for it, well done. Like, significance is like a really, really fickle thing. You can have it one day and lose it the next. So I want to see significance over multiple days at 95% plus and holding steady. And then I think we go, right, we're happy that this is an accurate result, and we're actually going to see this when we put it live as well. So it's really important not to call your tests too early. And there's a bit of an awkward truth here in that the longer you run a test, quite often the smaller your uplift looks, but the more accurate it is. So it's really tempting to call a test early when the uplift looks amazing, but it's not actually realistic. But 100% believe this. So number 4, doing an AA test is awesome to test your tool and your setup. So you run 2 variants that are the same. They should look statistically the same. Test your tool, awesome. And AAB is awesome for checking that and understanding your test as well. So you run 2 A variants and the B variant. So rather than just having 1 A variant to check against a B, you've got 2 A's against, you've got an A1 against a B, A2 against a B, and then A against A. So rather than having 1 place to check for significance, you've got 3, which super reliable. As I said, like, statistical significance is a tricky thing, and one moment you have it, one moment you don't. This gives you another way of basically checking that the test is done, because then you can find it in 3 places. And if it holds steady in 3 places, that's a really good sign. So all the sort of really good, like, cliched examples when people are talking about testing, it's like change the color of a button. There's tons of mileage in thinking about non-visual changes for testing. So I've seen really, really interesting and strong results in testing non-visual things like algorithm changes, search results recommendations, ordering prioritization, validation, and messaging. So just non-visual stuff. There's so much interesting stuff there, and it doesn't just have to be making a button a different color. So you can't test everything. And there's a sort of caveat here that the rules for A/B testing vary with scale. So whilst all tests will show a result eventually, some of them are going to take so long to get the traffic you need that they're just probably not worth testing. So for example, like small changes or low traffic pages, hard to test and probably not worth testing. The cost of the test way outweighs the potential improvements. So there's a kind of sweet spot where you understand the size of change that you're interested in. So this sweet spot is basically between the opportunity that you're looking for, the number of variants, and the traffic that you have, but also the effort that it takes to set up as well. So there is this cost to testing. It is hard, it takes time, and it's tough to set up and then you have to analyze it. So yeah, lots of releases also don't need to be tested, so pick your battles. I'll talk a bit about that on the next slide. And there's a really sort of slippery slope, dangerous thing here where people use testing as a way to avoid making decisions. Like, oh, we can't really decide about that, let's MVT it. Really? Like, hypothesis-driven stuff, super important to actually have a clear view of what you're trying to change rather than just going, we can't make a decision about its design, let's test it. Yeah, have a hypothesis about the thing you want to change, have a clear view of how you're going to change it, and this is why I'm a big fan of A/B testing. MVT feels to me that people just can't make decisions. Like, put all your insight and your knowledge into a version, test it against what's live, and see if you can make it better. This is a story about a time that I messed up. I worked in a commercial business, and we did an awesome job of showing to that business that, like, IT, digital people, it was like an offline business, like could like make a monetary difference to the business. So we did a great job of showing them these A/B tests. Look, we've made you this much money. There's loads of noughts. This is awesome, and they really liked that. And then 1 week after a release, one of the divisional CEOs came up to me and said, "Did you test that release this morning?" And I was like, "No, it was like bug fixes, small change. It was some stuff that needed to go out for the campaign. Totally didn't need testing." And I don't feel comfortable about that. Do we like know if it worked or not? And I was like, oh shit. We just hadn't communicated our testing plan at all. We've been so busy like trying to show value, and we had a really like continuous deployment. They were releasing like multiple times a day. He just picked up on this one thing and got opinions about it. It was like the release was fine, but what we hadn't done was educate the business about why and when we test. And we had a really simple strategy. It was high value and high risk areas, but we just haven't talked enough to the business about that, so they understand when we didn't test, which was important. When we did, we were really good about talking when we did test. So big versus small tests. Testing is not just for small changes. So the classic example I've mentioned is this like changing the color of a button. You've probably got bigger fish to fry. Like, do we think that's the biggest improvement we can make in any one area? So there's also a thing of like lots of small tests versus one big change. So lots of small tests will get you so far, they'll get you to a local maximum, but if you make bigger changes and have bigger tests, you can, in theory, get to a higher global maximum, which you'll never get to through lots of smaller tests, basically. So it's really like, don't be scared of big tests. That's how you get to like the next mountain, the global maximum. And if it's a bit scary, you can start out with like a really small amount of traffic to your test variant. And usually when a test is going to tank, pretty quickly because it tanks pretty quickly. So start with a small percentage, and then when you're sure that the test is fine, ramp it up for loads of people. I've even tested a whole site before. This was a bit silly, but this site made, I don't know, something like £1 million a day. It looked like that not that long ago, which is ridiculously old-fashioned, and the functionality was terrible. And it was basically a reskin job, but the business was so nervous about changing it because it made so much money. We A/B'd the whole site, which was horrendously difficult to analyze, but the business had like sort of confidence that they were making the right decision because they'd been quite happy to sort of keep with that, but it was an absolute nightmare to work with. Didn't even work on mobile either. So there's something really, really alluring about A/B and MVT that especially commercial businesses, they get like really, really attracted to it because it's so easy, it's data-led, but it really is. It's only one tool in a toolbox. There's so many other quantum call methods that we can and should be using. It's really dangerous to like get stuck on this constant sort of testing regime and this idea of like using MVT to make decisions as well, which is also really, really dangerous. So it is just one method, but there are interesting things you can do to start combining approaches as well. So when you've got a test, for example, like multiple variants, you've already got variants that you can then put into a user test. Like you've got the stuff built and it's user tested as well. But obviously, the test will give you like a what, it doesn't often give you a why. So this kind of combination of methods can help with that. For example, even something really basic, like stick heat maps on both variants of the test. Extra insight for free, like it's there, you're testing. You might as well run on these tools as well. And then you can potentially get a why out of it as well. Because it's nice to know you get an uplift, but sometimes you kind of want to know why as well. especially if you've got multiple things changed on a page. And last one, gotchas. It's super easy to invalidate and break a test, basically make it pointless. So, for example, if you've got multiple variants on a page and you've got content stored in different places, really, really easy for that content to get out of sync, and then you invalidate the test. Dev releases, insanely easy to break a test, especially if you've got things like shared components, and you think you're kind of doing something over here, you're actually having an effect over here. And again, just like being really, really careful you've got test slides, because obviously, as soon as something comes in that gets the variants out of sync, the test sort of null and void. And yeah, but tests on top of tests. So the more testing you have on any one site at a time, like the harder it becomes, not only the analysis, but then also not breaking all the tests as well. There's also a fun thing that testing basically proves everyone wrong at some point. It's quite a humbling experience at times, because you're like really like bet the farm on a variant and it like it won't come out. So there's kind of in there, it's like it can get a bit sort of fighty with stakeholders, and it's, oh, we'll test that, I'm sure it's right, and you will be wrong at some point, absolutely guarantee. So wrap up, testing's probably a bit harder and more nuanced and time consuming than people expect, and maybe a lot of the testing vendors say it is. And some of the things I've talked about make it a little bit more complicated, but they also make it a lot more accurate. And ultimately, if your testing isn't accurate, at best, you claim an improvement that you'll never see. At worst, you make the wrong decision, which is obviously really bad. So yeah, this is the whistle stop tour. I can talk way more about this, so if there's any questions now or afterwards. And I've also got some, this is like a primer. I've got kind of next up on if you want to get really, really good and get even more accurate with your testing. I can talk a little bit more about that as well. Thank you very much. Admin, any questions now? This is my talk basically in meme form. I could just put that on, to be honest. But...
Great imagery. Do you want to say something while I'm sitting around? Any announcements?
Okay, hi. So now Tom's showed us the right way to do MBT. Yeah. Okay, so why did we decide to do MBT on window journeys? So you should all know this goal by now. The aim of World Service to reach 500 million weekly browsers by 2020. So there's a need to encourage audiences to return frequently through repeat visits to help reach this target. Great. So we decided to use MBT to test one hypothesis. How are we going to do this? So this has come from Magdalene, by the way. So this is our hypothesis. If we add an interstitial onward journeys component inside the body of Windows stories, then people will be more likely to click links from one story to another due to greater prominence of links. So we're using Optimizely, which is an MBT A/B testing tool. This is straight off the Confluence page about Optimizely. At a high level, it's a means of validating changes to our digital products by serving a live audience different experiences and measuring the response. So basically, if anyone's familiar with Maximizer, which we've used in the past, Optimizer is now replaced that, what we should officially be using. And we've got an internal BBC team to help us set up on optimizing, which is great. If anyone's interested, get in touch with them. They are on our Slack under the Optimizer channel. I think it's got a Slack somewhere. So we did start off doing an AA test, which, as Tom mentioned before, is a good way of just validating that everything's working as expected. And we're now just about to go live with our first public-facing experiment, which we're calling Test 5. So we've created a new Onward Journeys component on Mundo, which tests the following variables. So there's either 2 or 4 links. We're changing the position either after the 6th or the 12th paragraph, and then the default is not to show component at all. So in total, that means we have 5 variations. We had a bit of a discussion over whether this isn't really MVT. In reality, we think we're doing an APCPP test. Is that right? I'm slightly confused by that still, but anyway. And at the moment, it's just recommending most read. More about that. So this is what it looks like. Sorry, the screenshots are not great. If you're interested to see this a bit better, come and see us afterwards. So this one here you can see is it's really can't even really sit on the screen. 2 links here. That's in Spanish says I think something like you may be interested in this. And then on the left is the 4-link version. So that's
right. So I'll start by saying that basically we couldn't do MVT on server side. So everything that we had to do here was post-loaded, and basically we had to make sure that everything sits below the fold, everything is post-loaded fast enough, and that we have enough monitoring to know when things are going wrong, so we can turn it off because we want to avoid unnecessary flash contents on the page. Cool. So how does this work? Initially, we load the Optimizer library. The Optimizer library will check if you are not, if you're part of the audience. For example, on Mundo, we just show the test to 10% of the audience. Can be turned off operationally in case something goes wrong. And basically, this would assign the value to the user, store it, and reuse it for the next load of the page. After that, because we're using MVT to test recommendations for the story pages, there are a couple of steps that we need to do just to show that the correct recommendations. So initially, we need to identify which category of users that user will be part of, basically based on a couple of parameters such as their browser, operating system, whether or not they've been visiting Mundo in the week before as well. And what optimized environment you have. So initially, we're going to use MVT to test different recommender systems and see which one is the best. So after we request the recommender system, which is going to be a response, numeric response, we're going to use that to go to Canada API again and request the actual recommendations. Again, initially we just have most read because we need to test whether what positioning is best to have the recommendations in, and how many items as well, either 2, either 4. And that's why we're using static data for that, the recommendations. And yeah, after we get the recommendations based on the recommended system and the static assets, we simply display them onto the page, and we make sure that we record everything. So we did a lot of work before actually looking at Optimizely in order to track everything. So we can feed that into our analysis and make sure that we make the right choices. Yeah, this is part of our monitoring. So we have we're using things like Dynatrace and Optimizer dashboard, which is not here, but cool thing from Dynatrace and Project Checks is that you can even this is raw scatter plot. And you can see whether the full page loaded slowly. So the things that you can see here is actually a questionnaire that we had on the page, a survey, and that's the URL for the survey. So I think we had it on for like a day or so, and make that page slightly slower. Some pages, because I don't think everybody got that. But this is a way of knowing when things go wrong outside. If anybody else wants to extend this, well, first of all, you need to make sure that you have components to switch between, because what this implementation of Optimize does is checks your layout and switches between different components. So if Optimize says your bucket A, bucket B, it's going to show you the component for bucket A or for bucket B. If not, it's just going to go through. So what you need to do is you need to configure your service, you need to configure your page layout, go and optimize and actually start an experiment. And yeah, it's probably a fifth step, do some analysis and make sure that you're happy with the results. And next phase is we're going to run test one for about 2 weeks. We're going to come back in January to see what the results were. We're going to run future tests for using different recommendation algorithms. So this is in collaboration with our audience engagement team. We can have other tests on the panel as well, but this is something that to be discussed. And we're going to start thinking about full stack optimizing and what we can do it for, what we can do for it for the current systems and for perhaps the new vertical. Questions? No? Where's Jim? He has questions. So the question is how we chose the language?
Sorry, in terms of the results.
Yes.
So which version is the most users?
So we don't have yet the results from the first test. We just have the test to verify that everything works together, all the technology works together. So we're going to come back in January with another town hall and provide the results.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Is it easy to use?
If Optimize is easy to use? Yeah, it's pretty easy to use. I mean, the main thing in this way of operating it is that you need separate components or the same components with different parameters, different configurations. So as long as you have that, you just go and optimize, you set your audience and variations, and just make sure everything works together, because we have a specific checklist from our marketing and audience team, and we have some checklist as well from our side. I'll say fairly easy to use, as long as you don't go with, as long as you don't make it too complicated. Yeah.
Would it have been easier to figure this out within our own setup, or so was it harder to get Optimize to work within our setup?
It is definitely much harder to make it work with our current setup at server side, because we cannot vary properly on all these buckets, for example. But it was much easier to do it client side. Simply you have a library there, and the library does the bucketing for you, and make sure that once you come back to the same page, you serve the same value, you serve the same experience. No? Oh, thanks.
Tom's still there. Do you mind if I use your okay. best use of Brexit. Right.
Hi there, I'm Ollie, and I work with the Link Data team downstairs, News Online. I mainly sort of work across use of topic pages and tags on the website and sort of across various platforms. So Russ has asked me to run through the workflow for article creation. I should stress I'm not exactly, the expert in this field, but I think it's part of my research as a case study. So to help us go through this, here's Tom, not that Tom you understand, but a Tom, who works in News Online. So what sort of sources do we use, journalists use to get their news stories? So we use the agency wires from EMPS, Open Media. So you can use AFP, Reuters, or maybe the correspondents will send in copy from the field, or World Service reports. And the last two are particularly useful because obviously we don't have to double check those because they would have already been double checked, the BBC correspondent, BBC World Service. Also we use BBC monitoring, so they're best for sort of regional, local content. And then of course, social media. So various people, including Tom in the newsroom, have these sort of prefab lists that they'll use to get filter content that they can use and rely upon. Also, they have apps like Dataminer, CrowdTangle, which basically trawls social media, and they give you sort of high traffic pages that you might have otherwise missed, or sort of offbeat stories that aren't being reported. So, Tom, his senior editor, or duty editor in this case, has found a source in MPS from one of the agency wires, breaking news story, and it's news out of Berlin regarding a coalition. So the asset, the senior ed, goes straight into the CPF breaking news tool, which you have to work out here. And yeah, ostensibly this is created solely for the purpose of creating a breaking news page and putting out as quickly as possible, brief explainer of the breaking news, and then the homepage routing, which you can see here. So it'll be in news, and yeah, there's a news ticker, BBC breaking. So when this gets sent out, it's obviously going to go to millions of users, and as soon as it's gone live, then Tom comes in. So he's now tasked with finding all the content. Okay, so he's got various jobs. So is there a live stream or video he could use that's BBC related? Is there audio files that he should go through or trawl through that might be useful to add? Are there social embeds that he can use? So the idea is to build up a fast-moving story in small bite-sized chunks. Are there hyperlinks he can use to click through to? Are there pictures from Elvis he can use, or does he need to use a stock image as a placeholder until the article's longer, more long form? Or are there maps as well? So the idea is to keep the story light and flexible. It means new elements, links, and videos can be quickly added. And it also helps to build up the story. So you can build up the story one paragraph at a time. So maybe sort of in the first 10 minutes, you'll end up with 8 to 10 paragraphs. And then over the hours following, or the minutes following, the page will need updating. So you have a sub-editor, or basically a senior editor, over the shoulder of Tom in this case, checking to see the updates are fitting in with, editorial policy, the best practice, making sure that the page looks as it should. So, also, while doing this, throughout the entire process, he'll be using CPS Preview. So as you can see, it's defaulted to mobile, because ostensibly mobile is our most important platform at this point, which is quite a new change. So it needs to be given special interest. It's also the most problematic to format because obviously there's width restrictions, and videos need to be formatted properly. Also, as part of sort of BBC policy, we implement this idea of a top 4. So the top 4 paragraphs need to be a standalone story. Do they explain the story fully? If it was just by itself, or in this case, MPA, which means multi-platform authoring, this would be the view on a red button. So if the viewer is looking at the story over a red button, does it explain fully the story? Is it fleshed out enough for that to be? So these are rapid updates, so they're going to be, happening, up to sort of 10 minutes, 20 minutes afterwards. So Tom has to now consider how the longer format will impact the piece. So does it need a headline change? Is it search engine optimized? Are the keywords in the full headline? Does the short headline sell the story? Does it make the reader want to click in, read on? And also, obviously, note the character limits on each. So you don't want to go over those. Those are, BBC standard. You don't want to make the headline too long or the summary too short, etc., etc. And obviously, the body is the main part of the article. So this is where the vast majority of our work comes in. Tagging and linked data. So down the newsroom, essentially they stick to 4 main principles. You look into locations. Can it be a countrywide basis, or does it need to be more granular? In this case, it's Germany. Is there a topic page? So it's the event tag. Who are the main players? So in this case, Angela Merkel. And if you're desperate, you can use the suggested tags, which is obviously now the Mango operating system, and it's transitioning through to Stargate. Okay, so what about the opposite side? So what about non-breaking? So obviously there's far more time to breathe. You can see Tom's very relaxed now. There's time to make a fully formed article out draft. You don't have a sub-ed over your shoulder. It's time to be creative and flesh out the article more. So again, back into formatting, make sure it's MPA compatible, check it works okay on mobile. And so Tom has written his story, the longer form story, not breaking. He's happy. He's thinking about something. And we wonder, has he followed best practice and formatted the piece well? He's saved it to the sub-eds to look at? No, he's not. Surprise, surprise. So what's he done wrong? So as we can see here, this is the piece that he saved as written. There's some sort of glaring mistakes. So he's gone over the limit in headline. His full headline is far too long. It's quite sort of derogatory. There are a vast degree of spelling errors, and it's not MPA compatible. So the sub-eds, being very nice people, they've not thrown it back in its space, like would usually happen. They have decided to edit it for us. So all those changes have gone through. Sub-eds are very pleased with themselves. So the page can now go live and published. So as you can see, this is the thumbnail. There's the short headline. There, and there's the explainer. This is the main live page. And you can see the fuller headline. And there's the topic page that's clickable and onward routes. And then the final piece to say is just ostensibly, you can see who's published it. We can talk about quality control. You can see who's published it through CPS. And these are the various statuses. Basically, that's the whistle stop talk. Any questions? There you go. Absolutely. have your face. No, I don't know. I don't think
His name, sorry, I lost track of his name.
presenter didn't.
Michael.
Yeah.
Michael.
Is it worth just, is this,
I have to talk how you feel. I can start, I guess, by saying, well, can you hear me now? Yeah, good. So, oh, no, it's a keynote file.
It won't work.
Work, is it?
it won't work from there, yeah.
I don't know what to do with the keynote file. I'm stepping back from it.
Go to, yes, I can.
Do you want the clicker?
No, I can do it that quick. I can go with that, because you've simply put it in Dropbox.
Yes.
it is.
I believe.
Do you understand?
Okay, so I went to San Francisco at the beginning of the month to attend a conference called Kotlin Conf. Yeah, presumably some of it could be downloaded, but okay.
Do you want us to start with the
Yeah. Okay, I'm downloading it now. Let's see. Oh, only a few seconds, that should be all right. Yeah, that'd be really handy. Yeah, okay, well, the slides will catch up in a minute. So yeah, I went to San Francisco to attend a conference called Kotlin Conf. Some of you who know me might be like, what is he doing attending a Kotlin conference, given that he is an Apple fanboy? That's not working either. Well, maybe I'll just do it without the slides. Yeah, the slides aren't working either. All right, I'll just do it without. I've got my notes here. So the obvious first question is, like, so you're a Swift developer, and you're at a conference called Kotlin Conf, which is about writing apps for Android. What the fuck? Well, it all started when I was at Songkick about a year and a half from now, and I was talking to one of the other Android developers, a guy called Roman, and we were in a pub, as the developers are. We were like, it's so lame the way it's always like, oh, iOS is better or Android is better. We were like, we should do something about it. I had a couple of points and I was like, yeah, we totally should. We should talk about it sometime. He's like, we should. I was like, okay, cool. And then I left Songkick and he called me one day and he was like, yeah, so you know that stuff we talked about? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to go to Warsaw? Yeah, but why? And he's like, because we're going to do that talk. And I was like, okay. Well, we were just going to say you should be friends, and that's good, right? And he's like, yeah, well, that's not really going to cut 45 minutes, is it? So we got together and we started collaborating, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we started pairing. He was like, teach me some Swift. And I was like, okay, cool. Teach me some Kotlin. So that's what we did. We taught each other a bit of each other's languages. And we kind of realized that they were really similar. And that was really interesting, and that we can maybe build some apps together. So we built a conference app for this conference that we were going to go to. Built one in Swift and one in Kotlin. And then we realized that that wasn't very realistic, because you couldn't change the conference schedule. And anyone who's organized a meetup or conference will know that schedules change. People have to drop out because their slides don't work. And so we're like, okay, we're going to need a server as well. So we built a server, one in Kotlin and one in Swift. And then we realized that that didn't really work very well for us, because we built a very generic server. So we built a backend from frontend layer, we got in the Swift. Like, hurrah, we now have something to talk about. Let's go to Warsaw. So we went to Warsaw and we did this talk. The conference was called MCE, and it was about collaboration between designers and developers, iOS and Android. So it worked really, really well. We got really fantastic feedback. Everyone liked it. People came up and spoke to us afterwards. We went to celebrate, and we had some lovely wine, and because we were in Poland, we had some shots and some pierogi. And we were like, this is fantastic, like, this is great, we feel amazing. we should do this again sometime. And we're like, yeah, we should. And so we looked online, we're like, oh my God, there's a conference in San Francisco. And there's, oh my God, there's one in New York. And there's one in Australia, and there's one in Tokyo. So we emailed all these conferences, we were full of excitement. And then probably forgot about it. And then I checked my Gmail one day, and I was like, oh God, damn. The Kotlin Conf got back to us, and they were like, yeah, we'd really like you to talk. And in the interim, Google had announced that, hey, this thing that you talked about, you kept saying how hipster it was to go off and tell all these Swift developers to learn some Kotlin, and all these Kotlin developers to learn some Swift. Well, now it's not really hipster because Google are talking about it as a first-class language. So we're like, oh, so we get to go to San Francisco, but now our talk is ruined. We don't look like the kind of weirdo kids that we felt like when we first did it. So we got back together, we all did some more work on it, and we realized that kind of collaboration was really the actual underlying message anyway. So off we went to San Francisco. We went in, it was all Android and Kotlin, and I was like, this might be a terrible idea. I'm not sure how well they're going to take to get me getting up and being like, hi, I'm a Swift developer, you should probably learn a bit of Swift as well, it's really cool, really interesting. But we got up and we did the talk, and the room was really full. And we said to the organisers that we're not going to do questions afterwards because, well, the talk's quite long and we're not really sure that it works. So we didn't do questions, but loads of people just started shouting questions at us afterwards, like, how did you do this? And how do you get started on this? And how do you get them talking together? And all this kind of stuff. And somebody was like, I brought my whole Swift team here specifically to get into Kotlin. Like, can you talk to them afterwards and all this stuff? So in the end, they kind of shooed us out the room because we were kind of holding up the next talk. Just completely not what we expected at all. And it was just really interesting to discover that not only kind of did I go to do this talk about collaboration, but I also took with me a lot of kind of, as we've been talking about recently, sort of unconscious biases. Like I kind of assumed that a lot of people who do Kotlin and who do Android would be kind of like, what the hell is this iOS developer doing here, talking about Swift? But that wasn't it at all. They were actually really, really interested, and they're really excited about the fact they might be able to expand their skill set without necessarily having to kind of learn Objective-C, which, if you've done Objective-C, there's a lot of square brackets. Not everyone likes it. In fact, very few people seem to like it anymore. Even though Objective-C developers don't really like it anymore. So yeah, so the talk went really, really well, and we had really great feedback. But I just want to finish with kind of my favorite talk that wasn't about me, which was from a guy whose name I'm not going to remember. That's not valid. Eric Meyer. And he was the speaker on the second day. And he came on in a tie-dye t-shirt with a big like peace sign in the middle. And he came on stage, and he's a kind of older kind of San Francisco dude. And he was like, so for the last 10 years, I've told you all what to do, and you've done everything that I've told you to do. So now I'm going to tell you what you need to do in the future, and you're going to listen to me because you've already done everything I've told you to do for the last 10 years. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? So we looked up his Wikipedia page, and it was like, yeah, I worked on C# and invented React for .NET. Worked at Google and created Dart. Worked at Netflix and created RxJava. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, he probably knows what he's talking about. And his talk was about, let me just get this right. It was sort of a two-part talk. He was basically saying that AI is coming for our jobs. And he gave a lot of examples about why that is and why he felt that we could react and how we could react to this. So he was saying that one of the things that we do as developers is we're kind of always thinking about like perfection, like what is the right thing to do, what is the perfect thing to do. And you say, a lot of AI people, a lot of these machine learning, that's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is good enough. They write an algorithm, they feed it with data, and it comes out with something that's good enough. The Facebook feed doesn't need to be perfect. It works on Facebook. It just needs to be good enough. And then we can feed the data back in, it will get better over time. So you should be thinking more like this. And the other thing he was saying was, I really like Kotlin. Actually, I had a slide where he says, Kotlin, because you don't need to write a billion lines of code to get work done anymore. So he worked out that there was like at least a billion lines of Android code that were kind of in like the main apps that are out there. And make Kotlin really nice because it helps to condense all that stuff down. But the thing that he was really saying was like, Kotlin's nice, but like we need to stop creating new things all the time. And we need to really hone our craft, and we need to be better at what we do, because the machines are coming, and whether we like it or not, they're going to take some of our jobs, unless we can adapt to this world and become part of it as well. So yeah, so that was the talk. I really liked it. Afterwards, I wanted to talk to him, but like he got mobbed by but the people that weren't freaked out kind of went up and talked to him. Yeah, so that was KotliConf. I don't know where I'm going to go next in terms of like attending conferences, but I'd quite like to do more stuff in the Android world. And I guess that's the sort of end of the story, is that I've spoken to Andrew, who leads the Android team for BBC News, and I'm going to sort of moonlight a little bit on do a bit of Android next year. So yeah, that's kind of where it's left me. And maybe I'll persuade some of the Android to come and do a bit of Swift. Yeah, thanks so much. Any questions?
Hello. Hi. Hi, I'm Sarah Hederi. For those of you who don't know me, I work as a web developer in the news discovery and creation team. Basically, worked on the front page, now on topic pages, and other things as well. I started as a web developer about a couple of years ago, and the reason why I found out that I wanted to be a web developer was attending meetups and conferences. So tech meetups in London, and actually volunteering at a conference as well. So personally, I really, really enjoy going to conferences, and I've been lucky to attend a few over the past couple months. And so hopefully by the end of this, if you haven't been to, actually I meant to ask, how many of you have been to a conference in the last year? Hands up. Okay, oh, that's cool. Okay. Actually, that's more than I was expecting, which is great. It's almost like 80% of you. Okay. For those of you who didn't put your hand up, hopefully, like by the end of this, maybe you'll be inspired to try to go to them or ask your manager or something like that in the next few months too. So, a couple that I've gone to was Usource Conf, which was actually part of the Mozilla Festival, so MozFest that happens every year in London. MozFest was over the weekend, and Usource was on Friday, just before that. And then FFCon, which was the week before last. So I'll talk. Sorry, apologies. So starting off with Usource, there were because it was Mozilla Festival, a lot of speakers came from abroad, and so there are a range of speakers talking about CSS Grid. So Ray Chandra talking about CSS Grid, and the keynote speaker talking about web VR and AR and the future and things like that. There were very specific talks, for example, Estelle Ware, who talked about web performance in terms of how to improve, how to measure web performance. So very specific things about that. Ada Rose, she gave a really interesting talk about Web A-Frame in terms of introducing these things. Web VR, how you can create virtual reality experiences through a website. So you can use about a £5 Google Cardboard device rather than spending thousands and thousands of pounds on like really expensive like virtual reality gear. So a lot of these you might think are really relevant to my day-to-day job, but I guess CSS Grid is very relevant in web performance related things. These are they give more practical suggestions in terms of what I can actually implement in terms of news from pages and things like that in our workflow there. What actually sticks more in my mind is the talks that were a bit more wide-ranging. So Keith gave a talk about how we are giving all of our data to large corporations, and how he personally, who's a web developer and a freelancer, aims to ensure that whenever he posts things up on Medium or other devices, or Facebook or Twitter, how he always keeps his own copy on his own platform. And how gave us step-by-step tips about how you can ensure that you are reaching a wide audience on different platforms, so like Facebook and Twitter and all these things, but also create like a canonical single place where that's reliable on your site, and that has much more longevity than all of these platforms will that you can point to. And that's really relevant for you as an individual person that might have a website, but also is relevant, I think, to the BBC as a whole in terms of reaching people on all these platforms, but also how you can link back to our main site. And one of the other speakers, which I think gave the other talk, which got the most like emotional reaction, I guess, she was talking about her experiences in the US. And how technologies such as Twitter and other social media platforms interacted in terms of far-right fascism, in that far-right like fascist marches that happened in her hometown. And so it was much more of it ended up making us who are web developers and web designers and things thinking about the wider impact of the platforms that we are building and allowing us to think about that a lot more. There are video clips of some of these, so I could share them later if anybody else is interested. One of the specific things that one of the CSS talks was talking about, so I'm just focusing on one of the things there, is that there's a CSS variable fonts that are in the next version of CSS that are coming in the future. So it's really interesting to see a bit of a preview from somebody who's in the CSS frameworks and through CSS working groups to update us on that. Now we'll go briefly to the FFConf, which is a different conference. I managed to get a free ticket to this, and it helps being on Twitter that you find out when somebody has a spare ticket that they're not using anymore, and I was able to get the day off. It was a Friday a couple weeks ago to attend. It was in Brighton. Lots of speakers from around the UK and elsewhere. In terms of things, there were different talks. Like a couple of them were deep dive talks, technical talks. So, what does garbage collecting mean in JavaScript and web layouts and things like that, which is really interesting. But what, in terms of practical things that I brought back that I can use right now is Bruce Wilson's talk about web accessibility and the intersection between accessible websites and reach across different locations around the world, which seems particularly important for the World Service 2020 project and all of our World Service sites. So he talks about how 1 billion users, and the next 1 billion users will be in Asia, and they will be on low-powered devices, and they will and what accessibility needs will they have what accessibility needs will they have. With a step-by-step kind of setup there. And Yosmani from Google gave a very, very detailed performance overview of like about 15 or 20 different things that you can do to make your website performant, including font loading, including like how you can analyze your websites and things like that. So it's like very, very detailed in terms of tools and frameworks and things. So if anyone's interested, I really, really recommend you checking that out. And again, the standout talk in this conference was not necessarily the technical ones, but the ethics related ones. So, the keynote, well, it wasn't the keynote, but probably should have been because it pretty much got standing ovation, was about what are your ethics in terms of what you do, whether that's an email client that you create, whether that is a website that you're working on, whether that's you're creating a service, how do you restrict access to that service to people, and what does that mean in a world where a small number of people own the majority of the world's data? And so that was a very interesting one, and I'll definitely share that around. very briefly, I was at a conference, speaking at a conference in Belfast. So it's about grandstands, CSS, how we share things. And after that, it was great to get people's opinions about people saying that they found it interesting to see what we do at the BBC. So I definitely recommend trying to at least submit lightning talks or something like that to conferences, because a lot of people are very, very interested about what we do here. And kind of on that vein, finally, there are places like there's a conference called Codeland, which I found out about a few days ago. Codeland is specifically looking for people new to tech, new to web development and things, and from all backgrounds, so technical, non-technical, so designers as well, welcome. And what they do specifically, if you've never given a talk before, they will pair with you, they will talk through with you, they will help you create like slides and everything. And that's open for the next week or so, yeah, next few days. So if that sounds interesting, or even if that sounds slightly terrifying, do chat. And it's definitely something that, and it's in New York, by the way, if that makes a nice stuff. Yeah, so there are lots and lots of places to be able to start to share what we're doing here. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a wide-ranging talk, but hopefully you found some of that useful. Thank you. Any questions? You can chat with me afterwards. I'm always on Slack. Thanks.
I will just say that Lola and I wanted to go and talk in Orlando, and we were told no, so we were able to go to Cornwall instead. So, where's Jonathan? No offense, not this or anything. I'm quite jealous of you not going to these fabulous places. And Phil.
Just say that the conference date for that.
Yeah. We could go out on the right to talk.
Hello, my name is Phil. I'm a developer in the World Service 2020 team. So I haven't any slides, and it should hopefully be super quick. We have run over time, so if you want to leave, I won't be paid. So I went to the AMP Roadshow conference, which was based in London, nowhere lovely like everywhere else has been, with some others from the department. I'm just going to do a really quick summarise of like the day's talks of what I found interesting. Yeah, what was a good takeaway. The keynote was by the tech lead of AMP. He opened with the big stats and numbers: 2 billion total AMP pages on the web, 1.2 million different domains are producing AMP pages, and 90 AMP pages are created every second. They then went into some other figures. AliExpress saw 37% performance increase, and this upped their conversion rates massively. Again, selling AMP as a commercial product can work. Also, lots of big details about from AMP searches to conversion rates, and how pushing traffic via AMP is a good model they think. Again, they are the people that build this, so they are going to push it. The next big line they had was when you choose AMP, you choose the user. So they're basically saying you don't choose AMP as a library, as a tool. You can choose performance, you choose page rate, you choose user experience. So you don't build your bells and whistles animation that the user's never going to look at. You make a page that they can use that's performant and better for them. You then push this idea of AMP pages and PWA can come hand in hand. So if you want new users and new traffic, they come via to your AMP page via search. You can then, they're building some service workers that are going to then preload your progressive web app in the background and push your traffic on. So they like this idea of a quick load for new users, and then existing users can just step into your progressive web app. They very much push AMP as a canonical, which kind of goes against the fact that it's called accelerated mobile pages. They are trying to get away from the idea that it's just mobile. They want full websites, desktop, everything responsive. The next talk was about the library components that they have, kind of pushing again that this can be responsive, this can work everywhere, this can work on desktop, this can do what it wants. Some of the interesting things they mentioned, the AMP video can come out with managed autoplay and auto mute. You just toggle those on, they look lovely, they work really well. They've got something called AMP Time Ago, which is going to be, they can handle timestamps backdated to multiple locales, so a bit like how the World Service have to do a hell of a lot of this. They are trying to support that themselves. Nowhere near the amount of support that we would need, so we won't actually have to make use of that. Another one that was quite interesting is they offer per element media queries, which to me sounds like UX's dream and a dev's nightmare. Again, pushing canonical. That one was spoke about. So then the next part, they kind of summarised how can you get AMP into your production with a set of simple steps. They said to generate, so make some AMP pages. Then look into optimising them, put in only what you need. Then go and validate, look at their validation tools, mainly pushing the stuff like Reddit that do this, which is user-generated content. They have a lot of tooling to monitor if they break your AMP page and make this easier for you. Lots of measurement tools, AMP analytics, and there's AMP experiments, which is for A/B testing, which looks quite interesting. And then a big point on content mismatch. So they're now going to start looking that if your content doesn't match, if you're running both a full fat site and an AMP site, if your content mismatches, they won't show your AMP page. They will effectively unvalidate it. It's going to be a bit of a push for some people. They went into a talk called AMP for kind of profit, which is actually just all about adverts, so it was mainly profit. Talk about making ads work in AMP. They are building an AMP ads effective library that has got some early success. They kind of gave this as a reason because they reckon the average mobile advert is 800 kilobytes in AMP on the web, which is probably the same as our front page at the moment. They're talking about prioritizing content over AMP, so you're iframing your adverts, they come in late. We have some quite clever loading strategies, so you can set a strategy to 2.0, and that means if you're 2-page scrolls of viewports away, it will only start to render at that point. As you scroll through the page, you can dynamically render your content based on their loading strategies. They then went into what they termed progressive web amps, where they're talking about using AMP library components in your own website, and then you can even put them into your own PWA, and it's so they've kind of got a mixture between the two. And again, as I said earlier, you first load the AMP super quick through Google Cache, and then you step into progressive web app, which is all pre-cache loaded. You keep the engagement of that user in your site. They've done some work on the service workers, it's not ready yet. They've done some work with Shadow DOM, so if you do bring in the AMP library in multiple places, it'll only load once, which seems like it'd be quite useful. There was then an industry panel talking about some of the successes and not successes of AMP and how they found it. One of the interesting ones was, that was the Irish Times. They were talking about using the AMP standards and restrictions as a way to kind of tech lead their members of their team. So without having some like a high tech lead or a bigger team, they can have some junior developers that if AMP won't let you do it, you can't break our website. It's the way they kind of saw it. He then kind of went on to say that this made them feel like plug and play architects, not developers, which they didn't like, and actually lost quite a few people. They realised this is pretty best because the more restricted they are and less developer freedom, it's actually better for the user. And then they started to realise that they kind of forced new innovation by having to make stuff work in AMP and work performantly, where they would have just built it in their own JavaScript and go, oh, I built that, and I can't move that feature, I can't make that quick enough, it's not possible. They then looked into what's coming up in AMP, just some these might be things they're going to build. One's an AMP date picker. I don't know if anyone here has made a date picker, it's horrible. They then did some video docking, so as you scroll past the video, it will pull it to the corner of the screen, fix it, and continue the article, the video playing. There's some sticky mute stuff, so if it's an audio clip playing, there's a button that will stick on as you scroll. It's fixed, you can stop. Some other interesting bits on that, right? The underlying messages I kind of saw was apps here to stay. They're not, they see it as a big success, so they're going to keep pushing it. It's not just for mobile. They will continue to build features that make this much better for commercial businesses. So they previously had AMP selection, they added AMP bind, and they now showed that you could quite easily build like a shop. So a night trainer with multiple sizes, multiple prices, multiple colours, all that variation is actually quite complicated in something like AMP. But they are really trying to push this as hard as they can. And the other kind of message was AMP shouldn't be an aside or a bolt-on to your full fat website. They think it can be a canonical page. My favourite few quotes from it, just before I finish, was the tech lead from AMP saying, we have 25 developers working on AMP, 22 making it slower, and 3 trying to make it faster. He said that one. AMP shouldn't be a user-facing brand, it should be a developer brand. The way that we say we have AMP pages is the equivalent of saying we use jQuery. It's not really something we need to push to the users, it's just a clever technology. Again, AMP isn't about choosing it's not about choosing AMP, it's about choosing the user. AMP will be a tech lead for a small dev team, and they ended with AMP saves battery because it's lighter, it's quicker, battery saves energy, less energy saves the planet, AMP saves the planet. That is it. Any questions?
What do you think is preventing everyone from jumping on the bandwagon as their canonical site?
That is a good question.
I personally, I think it would be a bit of a risk to jump straight on it now. I think there's too young, a lot of features coming, and again, they also did kind of push, the tech is really pushing, it's open source. We are not Google. We are technology that has come out of Google, is what they were trying to say. We're not part of Google, we're not part of Google. I think they want the community to get more involved and people to submit more PRs. They've documented how you can make your own changes. Chris has actually been told to make one of his own that he opened as an issue recently. I think unless that starts to happen soon, not that many people jump on too quickly. Thank you.
Was there any showcase or on your website, or for example, pages or indexes?
Yeah, so they did have some nice case studies. There's one, Speak Daily. Their entire site is out. The Evening Standard is completely out. There's a few others. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
I have a certain coach. So I work with the user and I work with you guys. So I basically I'm